I'm Nimi.
And I'm Ritu. From Adventurize, this is Venturing Beyond.
A podcast where we delve into the career stories of ambitious individuals.
Today we have with us Priyal Kenny, who is a chartered accountant working as a consultant. She is the founder of a nonprofit organization called Play and Shine, which aims to build a culture of sports where individuals receive right foundation and mentorship and support in nurturing and growing through sports in general. She's also a rifle shooter who represented India for around 7 years at various international tournaments. So, Priyal, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ritu, and it's my pleasure to be a part of it. And I really look forward to the fruitful interaction and conversations we're going to have in the next few minutes.
So, before we get started and dive deeper into your journey, do you mind taking a couple minutes to describe your career journey so far, what you have done, and how did you get where you are?
I'm a chartered accountant by qualification, and I'm currently working in the consulting domain. And outside of my professional and academic accomplishments, I'm a sports enthusiast. Been a rifle shooter myself for the past 13 years, out of which I had a 7-year stint with the Indian rifle shooting team. Traveled extensively across Germany, Czech Republic, Spain, and South Korea. Shot a lot of competitions, won over 117 medals, broke 3 national records, and it's been a very fulfilling journey as an international athlete till now. Other than that, I've even founded my own nonprofit organization, which is known as the Play and Shine Foundation. It was just a pursuit to merge my passion for sports, entrepreneurship, and social impact. We kind of promote sports at a grassroots level among children belonging to underprivileged sections of the society. And I have spoken about my work at TEDx, IIT Bombay, SRCC, and a lot of other leading organizations and institutions and universities within India. And my TEDx talk is there on YouTube, Sport for Sustainability, and you can give it a watch and try and understand the entire concept of using sports for achieving a sustainable development goals.
Yeah, that's amazing. In fact, as I was doing a bunch of research on you, I realized that your talks about discipline and focus and all that you've been able to derive from sports has been really immense in what you're doing right now professionally as well, so which we will talk about in depth a little bit later. But before I get into that, I just wanted to understand a little bit about how did you get started with sports and also with CA? How did your journey start with these two things, and was there any experimentation process behind choosing these particular professions, and how did the decision making process look like?
So shooting was something I very coincidentally stumbled upon. I was very curious to try different types of sport. Had already tried chess, basketball, throwball. Was pursuing them by the side when I stumbled upon shooting for the first time. I found out about this shooting club in my school that had just started, and they were going to have like a basic orientation session at the shooting range, which was luckily just 5 minutes from where I stay. And I just decided that I'll go for it because I was fascinated by the idea of being able to use a gun. So I went for that session, held a gun for the first time, fired a few pellets, and I think there was no looking back after that. It's been a very phenomenal journey since when. And now when I look back, it really amazes me that, just by plain chance or plain luck, I stumbled upon something which has now become such an integral part of my life. And trust me, that day when I stepped on the shooting range for the first time, I did not know that this day was going to be the big game changer of my life. And it was. I always say that sports is something that has really shaped my individuality in a very profound manner.
So, are you still pursuing rifle shooting professionally or to a certain degree, or have you stopped?
Yes, I'm still in touch with the sport, and I know one thing for sure, that it's such an integral part of my life that it's here to stay. It's as of 13 years down and a lifetime to go. So very much in touch with the sport. Still compete at the national and the state level. In fact, the last match that we had before, COVID surprised us all, were the national championships in Bhopal, which happened in December 2019. And I made a podium finish over there by winning a bronze medal in my pet event. So, still in touch with the sport and, still performing well in it. As far as chartered accountancy is concerned, it was more of a conscious or a planned decision, because I was someone who was always academically very strong. So I knew I didn't want to play it small, wanted to really set some milestones as far as my academic career is concerned. And when I was done with my 12th grade, I kind of knew that since I had taken up commerce, what I intend to do next, and keeping in mind the different professional courses that are available in India, and what I can choose out of the opportunities that are available to me. Chartered accountancy kind of aligned well with where I saw myself 3 or 5 years down the line, or what kind of domain I would want to work in, or skill set I would want to develop, or just the mere fact that I would want to study core accounting and core finance in greater depth is what really motivated me to pursue chartered accountancy. And I still remember one of the biggest things that interests me was the rigor of the course, because CA is a single course, like it's like one of those professional courses in India which does not have any form of reservation. So you getting those 2 letters before your name is solely and solely dependent upon the hard work you put in and how you sail through the exams. Like nothing else can earn you that degree or title. And then of course it's a very tough course with 2% success rate, 5% success rate in the final lap, that is CA final. And I felt that I wanted to really take up the challenge and see how I fare at it, and that's how I consciously decided to pursue chartered accountancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going kind of that. So when you are making this decision of wanting to pursue this for the long term, were there any specific set of people that you spoke to or resources that you looked into?
So, of course, talking to a lot of seniors or peers at college really helped, because at that point of time, I did seek some form of mentorship. I was on the look for a good counselor or a good mentor, but and due to some reason, it did not come my way. Of course, I have really understood the importance of it now, and I look up to many people as my mentors who are really guiding me and handholding me in a great way with respect to a lot of things. But back then, I did not have that kind of access, or did not have that kind of privilege. So spoke to a lot of my peers in college, spoke to a lot of my seniors, kind of tried and try to gauge an understanding from them as to what was their reason for pursuing the professional course they were pursuing, what resources did they look up to. Spoke to a lot of professors of, who else I can get in touch with respect to the preceding batches or any other alumni, and really put myself out there and spoke to a lot of people, immersed myself in a lot of research, like just sat off the internet for hours with 10, 15 tabs open at the same time, try and understanding it. Because any professional course you take up is a minimum 4-year commitment. Sometimes it's a 5 or a 6-year commitment. And then even the rest of your life largely depends upon that decision that you take back then. So I really wanted to be very sure about it. So,
a lot of times when you are just out of high school or in college, there just simply aren't enough people in your network that you can reach out to. You might have like an elder cousin or someone in your family who might have done it before, but a lot of times, it's very, very limited of a perspective as well. So now that you mentioned that you do have some form of mentors or people that you can reach out to, how did you find those people, and how does the networking process behind that look like?
So you have to reach out and seek help. Like, that is how bluntly I can put it. Help is not going to come to you, or nobody's going to be like, oh, she's a sincere student, or I see great potential in her, so I should go out and help her. It's not going to happen. You have to put yourself out there. Try and identify. The process starts by try and identify what your goals are, where you see yourself 1 year, 3 year, or 5 years down the line, and then try and figure out who can be the people who can really help you get there. Can be a professor, can be anyone within your family who holds the same qualification, can be any senior you have a good rapport with, anybody. And once you've identified that person who kind of belongs to the same domain, same field, aligns well with your goals, try and reach out to that person, strike a conversation, try to build an initial rapport, try to build an initial relationship. And once you have done that, then you can probably literally be more upfront and ask that you seek for their help, you seek for their mentorship. And mentorship also, I largely believe, is a two-way process. People never say no to help, at least in my case, no, because I have really made sure that anytime I reach out to anyone for mentorship, I always appreciate that person for whatever even little help that person has given, and also assure that person that the little time that they'll be giving me, the little effort they'll be putting into me, I'm always answerable to them. I'm always accountable to them. So even when I get onto a mentorship call with anyone, I set a specific agenda that, this is what we discussed the last time. This is how I have worked on the action points you gave me. This is my progress or track record with respect to the goals that we discussed. This is what I want to discuss in today's call. And prospectively, these are the things that I'm planning to do in the near future. So I would even want to know your 2 cents about it. So it's a two-way process. Make sure you're not wasting the other person's time. Make sure that you are consistently working on the advice they give you, and at the same time appreciating them in whatever way possible for how they're helping you.
It's always a two-way process, and it's also about thinking what is the value that you can give them as well, because a lot of times, even if there isn't a lot of professional experience on hand, there are a lot of other aspects like the foundation you're working on or the other activities that you've been involved in. There's always some value add. So thinking about the professional opportunities that you have been able to get, how did that happen? So even your current job or the previous jobs that you've gotten, is it solely looking for jobs on job boards online, or is it networking, or is it college placements? What has been your experience?
So for the current job I had, since I was a chartered accountant trying to switch into a consulting space, because chartered accountants are generally tagged to audit or taxation roles, but I want to really explore the entire domain of consulting and try to carve a niche in that domain. I went all out. So I basically started off by making a list of my target companies that I wanted to work at. Started proactively reaching out to people who are currently working there or have previously worked there, try and build some kind of relationship or rapport with them. Try to understand the kind of work culture there, opportunities or potential openings in the future, kind of shot out my resume a couple of places, made my profile in a lot of job boards. So job hunting in India is a very time consuming, and I may say sometimes even an overwhelming process, because you may apply to 1,000 places and might just hear back from 2 or 3, and that's more or less what the success rate is. So anybody also right now looking to make a job switch, like go all out. Like don't be dependent on that one referral you have, or don't be dependent on one job board in which you have invested money or played a profile. Like go all out, reach out to everyone, like try and speak to a lot of people even before you land an interview, even before you go into your round 1 of your interview. Try and speak to maximum people on what the interview is like, what their experience has been, and just immerse yourself in the entire process.
When you talk about the people that you particularly reached out to, were these common connections or people you had some mutual contacts with, or was it just strangers?
I reached out to everyone from first degree to second degree connections to absolute cold calling, emailing, everything. I had to leave no stone unturned. But I feel the success rate largely comes out of your first degree and second degree connections. First degree connections are generally your immediate friends, which were at the same professional level as I, but they knew a lot of second degree connections who were either alumni from the institutes they've studied at, seniors at work, managers at work, and they in turn referred me there from where there was a lot of conversion that came in. So for me, response rate wise, the first degree connections work, and conversion rate wise, the second degree connections work. But
so generally talking about sports and kind of career field that not a lot of women would pursue as like the first thing that they want to do. A lot of times we do it in schools, go to national level tournaments and leave it there, right? There's very few people who actually go on to pursue it and to an extent that you did. So have you faced any kind of bias or just like negative things coming from people that might have demotivated you?
So largely yes, because I have just observed the kind of society we thrive in. We always give other people the leeway or the freedom, or even if we don't give it, other people feel they always have the right to kind of throw their opinions on you, or largely they have this definition of what an ideal 20-year-old should be or what an ideal 25-year-old should be. And if you do not fit within their definition, they always have their criticism or their opinions to, throw at you. And whatever my timeline or my journey has been till now, I've always done things out of the box. I've always done things very unconventional. Like when all my peers or any 15, 16-year-old would only focusing on their 10th or 12th board exams and immersing themselves in study, I was someone who was like traveling the world and taking part in shooting matches. When I was at the fag end of my graduation, I decided to, start with my articleship and give my intermediate level CA exams. And by then, like my peers back at college were already 2 years done with the course. So a lot of people felt it was a calculated risk. What if I ultimately don't manage to clear my CA finals? Like my career would go for a toss. And then ultimately, when I was in CA final and decided to take a year's break from shooting to focus on CA final, again, people felt now you're gambling with your career as a shooter. At the peak of your career, you're deciding to focus on CA final. So at every stage, people have had their opinions, their criticisms to, throw at me. As a kid, of course, they affected me a lot more. And many a times I even succumbed to it, doubted myself, kind of discounted myself, forgone a lot of opportunities I had in hand. But now I've just realized how to put them at the back of my mind, not to pay attention to them. I wouldn't say they don't affect me. I mean, any form of negativity would affect anyone. Like nobody, very few people have that kind of resistance that they're completely immune to any form of negativity. So even now, if I get negative vibes from anywhere, it does affect me. But I react much faster. I learned how to put it away much faster, and I can just like spring back from it in no time. And that is something I have probably learned the harsh way, but I'm glad I'm pretty much like that now.
You are still in your 20s, and I think being able to have that kind of capacity to know what's important and what's not and process it that way instead of getting overwhelmed by what's been said about you, it's definitely a great quality to have. And especially today with the world of LinkedIn and social media and all of that, like I think like being able to compartmentalize those things and process them rationally is really, really important. So I do know that you are really active on LinkedIn, and that's how I discovered you basically. And you have been able to create your brand around that. So was that a conscious decision you took in terms of being really active on social media and like posting consistently? Did you have like specific objectives behind it? And I ask this specifically because this is the kind of advice a lot of young people get, and a lot of my friends as well. It seems like for you to be visible and for you to be seen by recruiters or any of those things, it's something that you got to do, and that might not be everyone's cup of tea, right? And you've been doing that really well, and you get a lot of great engagement. But what is your thought process behind that?
So starting to post on LinkedIn, or rather putting my LinkedIn on steroids, was one of the most conscious decisions I've taken in my life till now. Because for people who know me very well, know the fact that I'm generally the most modest person in the room. I don't like to brag about anything or even speak up about my achievements. Like so many times people have met me, they've known me for a couple of days, and much later they find out about the other things I do in life, and then I get a very standard reaction that why didn't you tell me about this before? But I really refrain from amplifying or speaking about my achievements. But since I have started working in the social impact space, and when you're leading an entire organization and you have some big ideas in mind that you really want to grow and you really want to expand the work, that's when a lot of responsibility comes on your shoulders. And that's pretty much what happened with me, because I realized that now is the time that you cannot play it modest, you cannot play it low. If you're really working, you're creating some difference in the society, it needs to get some kind of visibility, it needs to get noticed. And only when that happens will people acknowledge your efforts and come ahead and support you further, or more doors will open for you. So that was one of the main decisions why I started posting on LinkedIn, started posting about a lot of the social impact work I do. And a lot of people supported it, got to connect with some amazing people from the industry, through which a lot of doors opened for me. So it's been amazing. And I think once the entire process started, once I could actually break free from all these inhibitions and finally put myself out there and start posting, I got to hear from a lot of chartered accountancy students, a lot of current sports persons of how they find my story inspiring. And generally in my DMs, a lot of standard questions kept coming in that, hey, what's your opinion on this? What do you think about this? How do you manage this? Can you please guide me with respect to this? And I realized that, probably instead of me sharing my journey or my advice or whatever wisdom I have to share in these 26 years of my life with any one person reaching out to me on LinkedIn or one person reaching out to me in the DMs, I would rather put it out as a post there, because I'm sure if it's coming to this person's mind, there'll be 1,000 other people out there who probably will have this somewhere in the back of the mind, but did not muster up the courage to, literally DM me or, talk it out with me. So that's how I started posting a lot of content which provided insights about chartered accountancy, provided insights about shooting, sports, how you can manage conflicting careers. And I think because most of the content that goes up there largely streams from, questions coming in from people, from discussions that I'm having, like this, or, other real life interactions. A lot of people relate to it well, and which is why the engagement has really been going up. So that's basically how and when my LinkedIn went up on steroids.
So if you had to give certain tips or suggestions to someone just starting out on creating their professional brand on LinkedIn or just posting their opinions, what would your, let's say, top 3 tips be?
First of all, just start posting. Trust me, don't wait for the right time or the right kind of content or anything. Like for me, I wasted a lot of time initially figuring out, let me come up with an elaborate plan of action. Let me come out with this, let me come up with that. But I would suggest just start posting, see what kind of response, what kind of traction you're getting to what you write about. And the more you write, the more you kind of figure out what people enjoy reading, or what they really look up to you for advice, or what people really like to read about the different content that you post. So just start writing about it. And secondly, be consistent. You cannot put up 2 posts this week and then the next 3 weeks you're not putting up something. So be consistent. Because I have a very taxing and a very packed schedule, I kind of mark dates on my calendar where I know I have to write something on LinkedIn. If any idea comes to my mind, I already have a diary ready where I noted down that, this probably can be a potential LinkedIn post at some point in the future. And because once my day kicks off at work, it's generally so grueling that before I start my day at 11 a.m., I generally start an hour early, log into my laptop, see, what I want to write about today, keep the post handy and ready, and then probably upload it sometime during the day when I know that the traction might be higher or the response rate will be higher. So, I mean, monitor the timing or the days during the week when you're getting good traction, post consistently, and most importantly, just start, just get into the process.
Yeah, that's so true. Before we started off trying to figure out how to promote this podcast or, get our services on board or just spread the word, it's the same thing. Nimi and I, we sat down, we had a whole strategy in place, and we figured out how to schedule our posts for the things we want to write. And we had so much planning done that we just never ended up doing what we had to, because all that energy was spent into strategizing all of the things behind. But yeah, once you start, ideas come to you, and you also get to sort of understand what works, what doesn't, what is something that you don't need to say because someone else has already said it. And since you mentioned a couple of times that your work is really, really busy, but you're also able to manage time to do all of these other things that you are, and run your NGO and have engage in things like this and have that online presence. How do you do that?
Our productivity largely fluctuates during the day, and for me, what works is I have really identified these hyper productivity pockets during the day that really work for me. For me, I'm more of a night person than a day person. And after I've logged out from work, after 11 p.m., 12 p.m., I'm generally more hyper productive because number one, the pressure gets to me that, okay, fine, the day is coming to an end and you still have a list of tasks before you. And majorly, the most important things that are there at work related to office or related to the professional work I'm done, and that's ticked off. So then these other aspects of, working on my LinkedIn, working on the NGO, working on the other things, I just have those things in mind. And I have just noticed that that's one huge hyper productivity pocket where I can squeeze in 3 or 4 hours of work probably in an hour or 90 minutes. So try and identify these little pockets during the day that work for you. Try and squeeze in your maximum work during that. The little things can really be squeezed into these HPPs and they can be done.
So since you spoke about social impact a little bit earlier and how you've always been passionate about it, how did that journey look like? And when did you decide that, you wanted to do something greater and create a bigger impact by starting your organization? And if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
So I started Play and Shine back in 2018. So it actually happened because of a lot of things falling together. I was at the fag end of my chartered accountancy course. And after that, I really wanted to go back to work in the social impact space because that was something where I was actively working in when I was in school and college. volunteered with a lot of organizations working for child education and child development. So when I started looking out for prospective opportunities, started doing my research, a friend of mine who was actually now my co-founder, he came up to me and told me that why not start something of your own, because he knew I was very passionate about the social impact space, had this entrepreneurial drive, and always did something or the other to stay connected with the sports community. So he said, why not merge all these three together and start your own social organization by which you can, be a social entrepreneur, by which you're giving back to the society by promoting sports among underprivileged children. And though I loved the idea, I had my apprehensions about how many people would even resonate with it. So I decided to start it as a non-profit initiative first. Wanted to test, or rather do a pilot study as to how many people will even understand what I'm trying to do, resonate well with the cause, or even align with my vision. But in a few months, I kind of realized that people are really understanding what I'm trying to do, the problem statement I'm trying to address, and things really gained momentum. And that's when we decided that we'll go ahead and register this as a separate legal entity. And we got registered as a charitable trust. And now it's been quite some time that we're working in this space. Till now, I've had the chance to work with more than 500 volunteers on several projects, and have a lot of plans also in mind going forward. So it's been a very fulfilling experience.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting how you're able to scale it up that much that quickly. Did you particularly start with reaching out to people that you already knew or thought would be interested in what you're trying to do? Because as someone who's just starting out, does not have a lot of predefined connections in the space, how did that outreach look like?
Yeah, so I initially did start off with that approach, reached out to immediate friends and family members and tried to explain my concept to them. And I had a lot of connections within the sports community. So I knew a lot of people were already looking for opportunities by which they can give back to the sports community. And this seemed like an ideal fit. So reached out to those people and got them on board. And I think that was a good starting point for me, because they were like the founding team that I have, and the kind of crucial support that came to me from them at the beginning is, I think, what really gave me that extra push to or the launch pad to really get started with things.
So if there was someone to like a younger version of you, or someone just starting out in the social entrepreneurship space, or maybe someone who wants to pursue it full time, do you have any advice for that?
Of course, I would say your team is going to be your backbone. It's going to be your pillar. So pick your team very carefully. I have many a times really wasted crucial time, effort, and opportunities because I did not pick the right person to be on the team, or I counted on the right person to you. When you start a social organization or any venture, as a matter of fact, trust me, for you, it starts meaning everything. Like for me, even I look at Play and Shine as my baby, and I would do anything for it. Like I would go all out for it. And that's actually something I've already been doing. And then when you count on someone or take someone on your team who is not as dedicated as you to it, or probably does not appreciate the work you're doing, does not even put in the kind of effort you expect them to put, it's not only a demoralizer to you, but the entire team gets affected by it, and that can really affect the work, the flow of the operations. And the starting few months, they're really crucial, because you really need to take calculated risks. You need to tread carefully, because it's these first initial successes or failures that determine whether you're going to really continue, you're going to keep up with it, or how far you're going to scale up, grow, or succeed later on in life. So choose your team carefully, choose your people carefully, and I mean, invest a great amount of time in it. Just don't rely on someone or take someone on board because you felt that you can take a chance with it. Try and avoid all these chance factors or risks when it comes to picking people for your team.
I read somewhere that you are an avid reader and you do indulge a lot of time, reading all sorts of things. So if you were to have any book recommendations, or even, educational social media handles that you follow, or any resources that might help like an 18 to 25-year-old figuring life out.
So social media handles don't follow many, but one of the most powerful books I've read till now is The Power of a Subconscious Mind. I prefer reading that kind of a content. I prefer reading Secret and all those kind of books. So the power of your subconscious mind is something that has been one of the best books I've read till now, and a few things written there is something I practice on a regular basis.
If you were to go back to your 18-year-old self, right? Or someone who had just graduated high school or college, what would that advice be for someone who's just starting out?
I would have told the 15 or 16-year-old me that don't underestimate yourself. Like, dream big and just go after it. Like, I mean, now when I look back, like I told you, my regret is discounting my potential and not making the most of the opportunities I had in hand, because I failed to have an ambitious vision, or I really failed to dream big. So if I could go back, I would tell myself that, stop underestimating yourself and start playing big in life. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. The best learning will happen out of your comfort zone, even if it means at times you have to throw yourself under the bus to do it. Because trust me, till you don't take risks, till you don't do that, you'll never be able to gauge how far you can go. There are many times where I have underestimated myself and felt I cannot achieve something, but then mustered the courage and literally gone after it, only to realize that I have outperformed my capabilities or outperformed my potential or set new benchmarks for myself. So, of course, putting yourself out of your comfort zone is not an easy affair. You may feel very weirded or out of place at the beginning, but that is where your greatest learning lies. And trust me, stay committed to what you're doing. Keep working hard, because there is light at the end of the tunnel. That is something I literally tell everyone. Like, your efforts will never go in vain, even if failures come your way. Just hold on and keep going. Sometimes you'll win, sometimes you'll learn, but trust me, when you look at the larger picture, it's going to be a win-win situation for you.